Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2023 week 30, July 24th to July 30th. And we're just going to start out by figuring out some of the hardware needed to put the intake back on the car. So we've got all these studs, we got some nuts and washers, and we're just going to, make sure that I've got the right count and that, it's going to go in the right place, all that good stuff. Well, before we can put the intake on, we got to get the engine leveler off. So we're going to very quickly do that. So we're just going to undo the bolts, take this off, and then we can continue with whatever we're going to work on. So as I'm doing this, I'm just making sure that I've got the right bolts in here, and I had a 3/8 bolt down low, so throw that back in the bin, grab a 7/16 bolt and replace it. So the 7/16 bolt, it's threading in there okay, but it's a little bit tight. So I'm just taking a look in the hole, and I'm seeing that the head bolt hole is a little rusty, which is probably why the 3/8 bolt seemed to work just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my tap, and we're just going to tap out the head stud hole. And that way we know that the 7/16 bolt's going to have a good, clean set of threads to hold on to. Alright, now that the leveler is off, we can start putting the studs into the heads. So these studs, they screw in kind of easily. Some of them don't screw in as easily as the others. You can see the first one I put in, it threaded right down to the unthreaded part, where the rest of these are not really threading down all that nicely. So I'm going to grab a 5/16 tap, and I'm just going to run the tap through all of the holes, just clean it all up. These are used heads, so I'm being very careful while I do this not to dump a bunch of garbage into the evalley. I don't want to put a bunch of dirt into the engine. If I were smart, I would have tapped all these holes when I had the heads on the bench. I should have tapped the front ones, the back ones, all the ones for the intakes, all the ones for the headers. I really should have just chased all the threads sooner than this, but it is what it is. You live and you learn. I would do that in the future, probably. I say that I would, but sometimes I stick around and I don't. But I'd like to think that I would. Alright, so with these two final studs screwed in, I'm just going to grab some paper towel and I'm just going to clean up the lifter valley here a little bit, try and get as much junk out of there as I can. I just don't want any dirt floating around. I mean, in theory, that should only just float down to the oil pan and then be caught by the pickup and the filter. But if it gets stuck in one of the lifters, that wouldn't be a good thing. So let's just do a little bit of cleanup. And I can throw the intake gaskets on here. So as you can see, the ports on the heads are super small compared to the ports on the gaskets, but I don't care. I'm not going to port these heads. I'm just going to throw them on and run them as are. So since I've already got the tap out from the intake, I'm just going to start tapping out all of the header holes on the driver's side, since the driver header is currently sitting on the ground. And I figure since I just got those all tapped out, well, I might as well install the headers on the engine. I've kind of given up on the intake for the moment for whatever reason. I just decided it's a good idea to get the headers on now. I might have figured because I'm going to be kind of hanging over the engine that it might be a little bit easier to get the headers on without the intake on in the middle of it. So that's what I'm going with. So yeah, so doing this on my own, I struggled quite a bit to get this driver's side header on. It's heavy. I mean, the header's probably, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds maybe. I'm just trying to get those bolts started. It's just a real pain. So here I was like, okay, I'll get the front bolt in, and what I'll do is I'll try and get the back bolt and gasket in, but that didn't work because of the head design. It was just kind of pinching the gasket. So back to just trying to hold this up and get it all lined up and get one bolt started, and yeah, I'm just having a hell of a time with it. Now I'm like, okay, I'll just sit on the ground. I'll use my foot and my leg to kind of hold the header up while I try and get a bolt in. And this works a little bit better, but it still was not good enough. Still wasn't able to get it started. With the engine plate, I can't see shit from that angle. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually grabbing a jack stand, and I'm putting a jack stand under the collector, which will alleviate a lot of the pressure off of this while I'm trying to hold it up. And as soon as I do that, two bolts started instantly, pretty much, I think. Or maybe I'm still fighting with this. But yeah, as soon as I put a jack stand under the collector, it just almost instantly fixed the problems that I was having. All right, with the driver's side on, we're going to move to the passenger side, and you're going to see that I learned from the driver's side. I throw a jack stand under the collector, and this one goes so quick. I don't struggle with it at all, and it's just very, very quick and nice. Like, this side went so quick as I was editing the video. I finish, I jump on, I start working on the next part. I'm like, wait a second, did I even finish installing that header? And I had to go back and look, and yeah, that header's installed. So like, here I am, you know, switch the camera angle because I'm going to work on something else now. And I'm like, I didn't realize I was done, but I am. So what I'm doing right now is I'm setting the engine to #1 top dead center. So on a small block Ford, the cylinders go driver's side or passenger side front is 1, passenger side the second cylinder is 2, 3, 4 to the back, and then the driver's side front is 5, 6, 7, 8 up the back. So #1 top dead center, what that means is that I am setting the piston on the as high as it goes up in the bore on the compression stroke. So what I was doing there is I watched the intake valve open, which means that all of the combustion or all of the fuel and air would be coming into the cylinder, and then it closed, and then as soon as I got to 0 on the balancer, I knew that was top dead center on the compression stroke. So it's important to have your engine at 0 or #1 top dead center for a variety of reasons, which I'll get into in the next, well, probably 2 videos from now, as I need it. What I'm doing right now is I am starting work on the hydraulic clutch cable to go between the release bearing and the master cylinder. So I've reconnected it down below. I pulled it up to the top, and the 90-degree fitting coming out of the master cylinder right now is not great. It doesn't kind of flow well. The cable would be kind of pulled over towards the steering column and between the throttle cable a lot. So what I'm going to do is, I don't have any other Dash 4A and PTFE fittings, so I'm going to have to order some in. So that project's on hold right now. So yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of cleaning up the bench a little bit, putting some of the intake hardware away. Because I guess I've gotten as far on the intake as I want to go right now. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing these Ron Francis VSS terminals, and I'm going to go under the car. I think I'm going to go under the car, maybe. No, maybe I was just checking the fittings. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to install the starter. So I'm just grabbing a 3/8 bolt, making sure that's the right size, making sure that fits, kind of checking the length, and I'm going to install the starter. If I had actual engine mounts in this car with the long tube headers, this might be a real challenge to get the starter in. But since I don't have engine mounts, I got the engine plates. The starter goes in easy peasy. I'm super happy with it. Yeah, 2 bolts gets the starter off the bench, and then I can start, you know, checking out the wiring for this. So when I initially started running the wiring for the alternator and the starter and stuff, I had it looping around and kind of up the inside of the frame rail and then up and over the headers and down to the starter. Well, now that the starter or the headers are actually in, I don't actually like that routing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down the inside of the tire well, scoot along behind the control arm, because I know the tire is not going to hit the control arm. That would be crazy. And then come along the top of the K-member, and then I can just go straight into the starter for the power, as well as the Bendix power, or the solenoid power. So what I got to do is I got to cut all these zip ties back, because I was also running the head ground wire with all of those wires. So those would have gone, you know, up the inside of the frame, up and over. The head ground would have split off and gone to the head for the coils, for the coil ground. But I'm not doing that. All right, I'm just leaving the wiring for now, because I apparently cannot finish any project that I start. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to jump under the car, and I'm going to wire the vehicle speed sensor, or the VSS sensor, now that I have the terminals. And I'm also going to connect and plug in the O2 sensors. So there was a previous video where I did the initial terminations for the reverse lockout, which is the front or the connector on the driver's side of the tail housing. And at that time, I had also connected the reverse lights, which is the weather pack connector. So you would have seen that already. So now I'm just doing this third connector on the transmission, which is the vehicle speed sensor, which is the purple wire, and the black green and black sensor ground wire, I think. And at this point, I now have the Deutsch connectors in for the O2 sensors. So I'm just going to push the driver's side wires back through, and then I'm going to grab the Deutsch connectors, plug them in, make sure the O2 sensors have their Deutsch connectors connected and all pinned out and everything like that. And then I'm going to throw the O2 sensors in the car and connect them. Alright, so we're on a wiring kick. So we are now at the back of the car. And what I'm going to wire in now is I am going to wire in the emergency shutoff switch in the bumper. So Deutsch connectors, and the reason for this is I want to, when I'm in street mode, when I'm not at the track, I'm going to make just a loop back so that it's always on. That way, you know, if I'm in traffic, nobody can run up to the car, hit the shutoff switch and kill the car. That would just really suck. So, and also this way I can, you know, take the connector out, or take the switch out, do whatever I need to do. If you hardwire stuff, chances are you're going to have to cut it later, so I just throw connectors on everything. It makes life so much easier down the line. So right here, I'm just making the little loop back connector, so I'll show you that in a second. So yeah, very briefly showed you there, but it's just a loop from one side to the other so that when I plug it into the car, the solenoids are just powered on always. Alright, so now that the switch is wired, I can actually start working on wiring the contactors there. So I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to have a Deutsch connector on there, and so what I'm going to do on the Power feed side is I'm going to have the power wire jump from the one contactor power to the second one, and same thing with the ground. So the ground is going to terminate into one of the pins, and then there's going to be 2 wires under that same pin, and then it's just going to jump to the second one. So that way the switch on the dash or the switch on the bumper, either or, will kill the car, and it'll kill both contactors at the same time. Well, folks, with the Deutsch connector for the contactors done, that is it for this week's video. So as always, if you have stuck around this long, I would like to thank you for viewing, and we will see you in the next one.